Hey there, folks. Travis Rudros here with another question and answer session. As always, if you would like a question asked on the show, join the Discord in the description below. There's a Q&A little channel there you can ask in. You can also leave them here on YouTube. Just make sure you put like question in front of it just so I know you want to ask it for the show. And yeah, as always, let's hop right into it. Anonym asks, question, do you think that FFTCG should be played in the best of 3 format on competitive level? I would personally enjoy that. So I think the biggest pro and con for best of 3 is, the biggest con is obviously time, right? You go to a Swiss round currently, if you go to a Materia Cup, a store championship, they'll have 5 to 7 rounds of Swiss usually, and it's best of 1. And that can take quite a while to get through. So imagine if you do best of 3 on top of that, it takes longer. So yes, time will always be a factor, and there's just no way around that. With any game ever, if you play more games, it's going to take more time. So that is the obvious downside, is it will take longer. However, to me, the obvious pro is that ideally, I believe the point of a best of 3 is that you want the best player to win, right? So you want, if player A is a better player than player B, player A should win the matchup. However, sometimes luck can be a huge factor. If you have a setup deck and you don't see any backups, even after you mulligan, you're kind of hosed. Like, that's likely a dead game for you. And the same can be true of a pressure deck. Was testing with someone with a Golbez deck the other way. The whole point of that deck is you're looking for one of 2 cards, turn 1, Golbez or Merylweb, to go search out Golbez. And I had a few games where I know I had at least one where I was practicing with this person and I didn't see either. And so now the deck is kind of unplayable without that. There's no other backups. There's colors all over the place. So it would feel really deflating to go to a tournament. All right, I'm all ready. Here we go. And then boom, you don't see the cards you want to see. So, and it's interesting too about best of 3 because we do it for the top cut, right? So we recognize in the top cut, we want that to be the most competitive, accurate version of the game we can, right? So why don't we extend that to Swiss though? Why should you have to kind of luck your way through Swiss? Not to say it's pure luck, of course your skill matters as well, but why risk having those dead matchups where in top, but you don't do it in top cut? That's the part I've never really understood. Whereas something like, okay, Magic the Gathering, which I play right now, when I go to Friday Night Magic, every round is best of 3. So whoever my opponent is, we always play best of 3. And sometimes, does that completely solve the luck? Not at all. I've had best of 3 round matches in Magic where I get terrible draws, 2 games in a row. Bad, nothing but lands or all lands, and I just lose 2 games in a row. So even with that, like, insurance, it can still happen to you, but the variance is a lot lower. That's just statistically that's going to happen as you play more games. You're more likely to see the cards you would want to see, whereas if you just have that one-off, sometimes you're just like, well, what could I do? I didn't draw anything, or I did draw or I drew too much of the lands, whatever. So, and again, I'll be honest, are there times it feels lengthy at Magic? Totally. After there are times I'm like, oh man, this is a long round, 50 minutes back and forth. But overall, I do like it better because you don't have that feeling of like, man, like, how is this fair? I didn't even draw the cards I needed to, and I have this specific strategy. So I would be fine with it. I know a lot of people have said they don't. I don't know if time is just a reason, because for me, time is the only negative. I can't think of another negative for it, is that other than it takes more time. But even the ones I've watched online, like, I like seeing a best of 3 tournament. So for me, I'm all for best of 3. Agent 20 Zombie. Oh, I guess it's supposed to just be Agent Zombie, just with a 2 instead of a Z. So it will say Agent Zombie asks, to piggyback of that one, which I think was the last question, do you think you'd like the FFTCG game more if we had a sideboard and played best of 3? So obviously, I just kind of mentioned best of 3. For sideboarding, you have to have multiple matches to sideboard, right? How could you possibly have a sideboard in a single match? Again, you'd have to like swap cards out right in the middle of the match, and that just sounds insane. So here's the funny thing about sideboarding, because I'm going to be totally honest about this. When I play Magic the Gathering Arena, which is my favorite kind of trading card game to play right now, I mainly play best of 1s. Why? Because when I'm playing on Arena, I'm really just playing to just get in some quick games. And the quickest thing to do is best of one, match in, out, done. Whereas best of three, you have to commit to at least 2 matches, potentially 3, and the sideboard is a part of it. And while I do appreciate the strategic level of that, when I'm just trying to get in and out, I don't want to think about it. Now, granted, but again, that's me in my spare time. Hey, I just want to play a couple rounds. Hey, I just want to knock out my daily quest and then move on with it. So I don't want to do sideboard or best of 3 sideboard for all that. But in an official tournament, you bet your ass I want that sideboard. And I've done enough matches at my casual Fridays where you'll see, oh my gosh, this card, what was it? I had some deck the other day that I had like targeted removal, but this person was basically playing just like control counter deck where they really didn't put any creatures out. They were just going to wait until they got to like knock you out with this one big thing. And so when we finished the first match, and I don't even remember if I lost or won. I might have lost. I don't remember. But of course, I take out all that like single targeted removal because like these are worthless. These literally don't do anything against this matchup. And I sideboarded in, I think, 4 things that actually worked in the matchup. And that was a cool feeling. And FF has so many cards that are just made to be sideboard cards. Ice has several. Sid Randell is like one of the biggest ones I can think of that. He's so good in certain matchups, and he's so dead in others. So he'd be such a great card to have in your sideboard. Anytime you're playing any ice deck, like, you've got Sid Randall on demand, and you get to decide as a player, like, you know what? Time to bring him in. Or what about Dark Emperor? I think Dark Emperor is another card that just, you see some of these Warrior of Light, Une decks, or even the Kingsglaives decks where I'm going to side in Dark Emperor. Now, all those action abilities you rely on, not a single one of them works. Amazing. So FF has some great cards that are premium for sideboard. Gentiana's another one I always think of. Amaterasu could even be one. Like if you have fire, because there's some matchups, maybe they're not as reliant on auto abilities. Maybe they're really summon focused, so you don't need it. Maybe you swap Amaterasu then for General Leo to say, okay, well, I'm going to shut off all those summons. So I think that would be really cool. Now, again, fair is fair, and I'll always be honest about this stuff. I do find the act of sideboarding in Magic very tedious. Especially because, again, you get 50 minutes to play 3 games. And granted, Magic games tend to be a little quicker than FF games. Not always. You can have some long ones, but they tend to be a little quicker. But again, on Arena, it's really easy, right? Because it comes up, it's digital, so I can just take my mouse here and I just go, okay, that, boom, swapped, it's done. Whereas in real Magic, I have to physically pull the cards out, take out the cards I want, physically put them away, and, I don't want my stuff flopping all over the table, so I'm sitting here trying to be kind of clean about it. Then I got to reshuffle my deck and all that. And then at the end of it, you have to then put back the cards that were originally in your deck. You have to start with the same cards at the beginning of each new round. Whereas again, on Arena, I just load into the next game and all that's done for me. I don't have to like physically take all the cards out again. So while the act of it is very tedious, again, if I'm playing a professional game, I would like to have that option. And what I think they should do, and I don't think they do it in like Magic real life, what I would do, like let's say FF ever adopted it, give a minute for sideboarding. Minute and a half, 2 minutes. I think it's like 2 minutes on Arena, or maybe a minute and a half. But pause the clock. So if it's a 70-minute top cut, best of 3, and you've burned off 40 minutes, you've got 30 minutes left. Pause it, give them 2 minutes to sideboard, then go on. And you can be dead on it. Be like, sideboard, here's the timer starts now, and you have to be done messing with it, once the 10-second mark hits or whatever. But anyway, obviously, I think it would be very fun. It would give decks some extra flavor, and it would have, there are some cards I think it would just be really, they would just fit it so well. So I think it would be fun to see. Dragon Lord asks, which is more important to focus on when it comes to the design of archetypes, category or jobs? Obviously, in an ideal world, they'd both be great, but let's say I had to pick one. Okay, so if I have to pick one, I would choose category. And the reason because category is, of course, a bit broader, right? So category Final Fantasy VI encompasses every single character that ever appeared in Final Fantasy VI, including the monsters, including the summons, whereas job returner or job treasure hunter that Locke is, or king, that really narrows it down. And more importantly, to me, and maybe others don't feel this way, one of the buddies who used to play with me at my locals, he never played any of the Final Fantasy games. He was just in it for the card game and to socialize. But for me, the reason I got attracted to this game is because I am a lifelong Final Fantasy fan. You know, I played 6 or it was 3 on the SNES way back when I was like 4 or 5 years old. Was my first Final Fantasy game. So I've always been in love with the series and dedicated to it. And so to me, the categories is what makes it feel like I'm playing the game in the card game. And that is the best feeling for me. So when I play category 6, I want to see all the returners. I want to see all that Amano art. I want to feel like I am taking my party from FF6 and putting them on the field and fighting with them. It's probably why my favorite starter deck is the Final Fantasy X starter deck that got released, because it felt like, other than poor Kamari, that you were battling with Yuna's team of Guardians, that here they come. This is the team you took into Final Fantasy at 10. You know, that's kind of been one of my complaints about like 7 is so well represented, but only for a few characters: Cloud, Tifa, Barrett, Aerith, Sephiroth. My party, the first time I went through that game, and anytime I go through subsequently, I always mix my parties up because I just want to try all the characters, but my main party was Cloud, Sid, and Vincent, where there isn't really a Cloud, Sid, and Vincent that like work together. So for me, categories is that tie-in that I think does draw people into the game. You know, I think more often than not, you'll have people like me that are, oh, I loved FF7. Oh, I loved FF14. I loved, you know, FF1, a very original one. And so let me see how this game represents that, versus someone like my buddy who was just like, well, actually, I don't know anything about him, but, you know, I just kind of thought the game looked cool. So if I had to pick, I would pick categories for that reason. Lance, the Funky Town Hooligan, asks, do you think we'll ever get an instance of the old advanced rules becoming relevant with the all Square Enix TCGs are compatible? He kind of clarified for me later what he meant by this was, I guess there was like Breath of Fire TCGs, or there were some other TCGs Square Enix had, and apparently their old advanced rules and chapters said like they're all relevant together. So to be honest, I just don't know a whole lot about this, and I don't like commenting on things I don't really know about, because how can I give an opinion? But I guess just the broad opinion right now is I can't see that coming to pass, not without like a major rewrite. FFTCG seems to be very locked into being its own thing. I can't imagine like the Square Enix universe coming around. Like I know there's the universes TCGs, right, with like My Hero Academia and other card games that all fit like within that universe, but I can't see that happening with FF specifically, or Square Enix. Tetris Limit Break Berlin asks, what will happen if Twitter is shut down and all the rulings are gone? Chaos. That would really suck. Unfortunately, we're still waiting for an update to advanced rules to cover so many of the new features we've gotten, and just, you know, hopefully, man, I have always thought of one day putting in the time and effort, which I don't want to do because it'd be so much time and it's not like I get paid for it. All the Twitter rulings and compendium, make this compendium where you could just go to it. You could basically search keyword Sabin, and then they pull up the rulings related to Sabin in all his forms. It would be insanely comprehensive and expansive, so of course I don't want to do that. But yeah, unfortunately we do still get a lot of our information from the Twitter rulings, so that would be a big issue. I don't know who we would ask after that. I guess we'd have to find another medium, Facebook or Discord. Luckily, you know, we know some people like Eureka. He lives in Japan, so maybe he would have some connection for that in the global Discord. Other than that, we'd just have to do like, let's say we couldn't get any information from Kageyama or anyone on the design staff. Like, I guess we just have to do our best to interpret it, which would not be good. So let's hope that doesn't come to pass. Dragon Lord, second time in this video, asks, did you know there's a custom card Final Fantasy TCG community? Though it's small and has been dormant recently, do you think there could be potential content in reviewing custom cards? I believe he was referring to Mogpod Gaming. The custom card creator came out close to the start of the pandemic, because I remember I was in one of my classes when it came out. We were like, oh, that's so cool. And we kind of all made cards like with our friends. And it's a really cool custom card creator. I really liked it. Unfortunately, they just haven't really been very active since then. And I remember there was a real excitement when it first started, because, again, everyone thought it was cool. Oh, I can take this photo of my buddy, slap him on an FF card, and make up a bunch of text for him. I made one for myself. I made one for, the girlfriend. And it was fun when it started. It definitely died out quickly, though. Why? Probably just because it's not real. Like, it's fun, and the images are fun to see, but I don't know. So I've seen a whole string of there's a bunch of Persona cards on there, and I actually read through them, and I love Persona 5. And so it was cool. It was cool to see those cards, and, props to whoever took the time to make those. But then there's also this feeling of is there any merit in thinking about them from a balance or analytical standpoint, which I love to do with cards? How good is this card? Is it strong? Is it weak? Is it in the middle? Is it none of the above? But it feels kind of meaningless with those cards just because they're not real. So it doesn't even matter if you made a broken card effect, Joker, the Persona character, 1 CP, 10k body, when he enters the field, break every character on your opponent's field. It would be clearly busted, but it's not a real card, so kind of what does it matter? So for me, I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but for me, it's a bit hard for me to sink my teeth into them on any deeper level just because I know they're not real. So it just feels like, well, what's really the point of thinking about them and analyzing them if nothing like that's going to come to pass? Now, however, if anyone in the audience, if you would be interested in seeing something like that, let me know. I could definitely add that to a slate of videos if people would like it. But I don't know, given how little buzz and traction those posts seem to get too, I don't often see too many reactions to them or comments on them. I also have a feeling others may feel the way I do, so if you feel differently, absolutely let me know. Firewolf / The Burger Man asks, you are a director with an unlimited budget and choice casting. Ugh, if only, please. We don't even need to read the rest of the question. That's everything I could ever want. Okay, which mainline FF game would make as a single movie, which is a TV show? I think if I'm going for a single movie, not like a franchise, not a trilogy, anything, I think you pick one of the earlier Final Fantasies. I think simpler is better then. So I would probably go with Final Fantasy 1. Again, it's got a simpler story, there's less characters, and that's a good... You don't want to just overwhelm your audience with a ton of characters. And make them just feel like fodder. I think 1 would be a good place to start. You have your main heroes, your warriors of light. They can have different powers and responsibilities, jobs, which would be very cool visually. You could do a lot with. If you were to go for any of the more, the heavier story ones, my next instinct would be 4 for a single movie. As much as I would love to see something like 6, there's just too many characters in 6. And 4 kind of borders on that too, right? If you had a core group of 5, like Cecil, Rosa, I don't want to call him Cecil, Cecil, Rosa, Rydia, Edge, Kane, which is your final party in that game. But then also you've got the twins, and you've got Yang, and you've got Sid Palandina. You get a lot of characters in that game. And so you want to be as true to it as possible, right? Or at least I would want to, because if you cut out too many of those, well, okay, but those were characters in the game, and now you're changing it too much. And I've never really liked that. When we all see a movie that's based on a comic book or a video game, we want it to feel like that. It's kind of hinting at what I said earlier with the game, right? When I play an FF game and I play it in the cards, I want the cards to feel like the game has transferred over. And so if you cut out all those extra characters, I just don't think it would feel that way. So for me, I think simpler is better. I would probably do FF1, maybe FF2. FF2 has often been compared to Star Wars. It's the Emperor attacks their hometown kind of thing. So, and obviously Star Wars is a huge hit. So, but I think FF1 would be my choice place to start. For a TV show, I think 10 or 6. I think 6 could really be interesting. Especially because, you have that big twist where the world gets destroyed, World of Ruin. So that, I think, would be really good on a TV show. That'd be a good way to end a season. And 10, too. Just 10 has a very clean, driven story that you go to, you're on this journey for Xanarkin and the Summoners. But it's long enough that you would want a TV show to be able to space it out over multiple episodes and get to know everyone. As far as casting, man, I have no clue. There's so many characters to cast, so I just can't honestly answer that at this moment. Except throw myself in there. I want to be in the Final Fantasy. I at least got to be a cameo in my own film. And then another one, I do think 15 could make a decent movie too, especially because I think there's a lot of fluff you could cut out of 15. But again, you've got really 4 main characters as your protagonists, and then you've got Arden. And then beyond that, I mean, Luna Freya is probably the other one's 6, but that's really not a huge cast. So I think 15 could make a good movie as well. So those would be my choices. The one and only Lance Pearson asks, regarding spoiler season, how long do you storyboard for your fantastical video spoilers? Well, thank you, Lance. I'm glad you like them. It depends on the video. Some ideas come to me very quickly. Some I've had to think on. I remember, so like my very first one was the carbuncle. And in the Discord at the time, there was a lot of talk about my quote-unquote fancy robe because I guess like the sleeve of it showed in one of my deck techs. And people were like, oh, what's that fancy robe he's got? So I was like, okay, well, I'll do a video showing off the robe. And there was a joke between me and some buddies, too, about advertising and how, like, when you go to an audition, you can be like, the delicious taste of a refreshing Coca-Cola or whatever it was, or Pepsi. And so that one came pretty quick. I was like, okay, I'll just combine those two and kind of make that character. The one with, like, Gramps, the Adele parody, that one took me a while to think of because when I saw the card was Hilda, and the first thing I thought is, oh, it's Gramps. It's a clearly better version of Gramps, like in every way. But then I was just like, well, what do I want to do for this? And then somehow, some way, I had either been playing the piano and played that song, or I had listened to it, or I was just thinking about it. I think I remember actually laying in bed, like kind of falling asleep and just thinking, what to do, and then the Adele kind of song. And I was like, yeah, the Gramps card, or the Hilda, it's a card like Gramps, right? But it's better. And then suddenly I heard this line, never mind, I'll find a card like you. And that particular lyric, find a card like you. And I was like, oh, that's that Adele song. And I said, well, I can kind of play that on piano. I was like, maybe there's something there. And then I kind of started, branching off from that. So, but that one took a while. I remember it was getting kind of close towards like, oh man, I'm going to have to release this thing soon. I just don't know what I'm going to do for it. And yeah, it really just depends on the cards. I try to relate it to the card in some way if I can. And in the videos too, if you go back and watch them, you'll see a lot of little hints. So like in the last well, and it always makes me happy when people pick up on that in the last well video, I cut the guy's hand off and he's like, oh, you made me discard my hand, which is what Lastwell does, the card, right? He makes you discard a card. Or same with the Maria video. I purposely had my opponent, my neighbor, play the cards that mimicked what Maria's effects were, activate everything and take a card from your hand. So I had him play Irwin and Pekiota. So I like to throw in little hints like that if I can. I do like to show at least a clip from the video game to just kind of, I don't know, that's like nostalgic for me, I guess, to tie it to the games. I don't actually write out like a storyboard. Like I don't have a bunch of cardboard sitting somewhere with like images, but I do write the scripts. I have all the scripts still saved where sometimes I'll write out an outline, then I'll get particular dialogue. So I did some filming for this, what is this, Opus 20. So I've done some filming for this spoiler, so I've got to obviously edit it and get it all together, but did some filming last weekend, wrote out a script for that. And then some of them just kind of come out of nowhere. So like thinking of the last one I did with Garnet, that one came the day I got her. I went to Dairy Queen that night and I was getting some food. And I have just a random kind of like, it's not an iPod, a little MP3 player that just shuffles music on my player. And as I was leaving Dairy Queen, John Denver's Country Roads came on. And I love that song. My dad played that song on guitar, so of course I listened to it. And those first lines, almost heaven, and he says West Virginia. And I started singing along with it, almost heaven. And then when he says West Virginia, I actually kind of paused for a moment. I said, and I heard in my head, Alexandra, even though I think the city is technically called Alexandria, but of course Alexandra like fit in the lyric of the song. And I was like, wait a minute. And I started thinking, could I do a video with this? And then, okay, the planet they're on is called Gaia. So what if instead of Country Roads, it's Gaia Roads? And then I sold it to my girlfriend that night. I was like, what do you think of this idea? So, and big shout out to her too. She helps me with the filming of all these. She was in the last well video. So yeah, some of them pop up very quickly. Others, I really have to sit there and think. I'm just like, I don't know, like what makes sense to do for this. So yeah, and again, I do have scripts for all of them too, and it's funny to see kind of the changes they go through too. Sometimes things don't work out. If I had a budget, oh my gosh, I would love to put on productions for you guys. I don't really ever want the videos to kind of exceed 5 minutes because of course people are still there. They just want to see the card. go on with their day, so I don't want to give like a 30-minute TV show. But I would love to have like, a full costume of characters and look like them and have super special effects. Unfortunately, one, I don't have the budget for that. Two, I often just don't have the time. Usually when I get a spoiler, I have maybe 2-3 weeks. And then, of course, on top of my job and any other obligations I have, I just don't have a lot of time to get it all done. So I usually have to work pretty quickly, but that's kind of a little behind the scenes for that. I'm glad you like them. People do seem to really respond well to them. It means a lot to me when I'll see people in the Discords being like, oh, when's the Rudra spoiler coming out? Like, his is always kind of something special to behold. So hopefully I can keep entertaining you guys and I don't disappoint. And I hope you like this one I've got for Opus 20. So, because I think it's a good idea. Of course, never know till people see it. So thanks for the question. And last but certainly not least for this week, Soranoka asks, what would you do to make a community from scratch, and what to make an existing community bigger? Whew, what a question. Great question that if I had all the answers to, maybe my locals would still exist. So interest is what you need, of course. You need people who are interested, who are willing to play. And in particular, and I think this extends beyond the card game, I think this is just kind of true of life in general, that consistency is huge. Magic has Friday Night Magic. When my locals played for FF, it was Monday night Final Fantasy. We went to the shop and it was Monday nights at 6:30. So even if you start with just a group of 4, 5, 6 people, obviously if you're working with a shop, what nights can they even host you? And then find out what nights work for everybody and pick the most consistent thing. Because if you pick a weekend, a Saturday, and half your crew, people, the weekends are oftentimes people like to do something. They have other events. If they're only going to be able to make it every other Saturday or maybe once a month, or it's just like, well, I just have to see the day of because it's the weekend, don't pick that time, because the consistency of you want the people coming over and over again every week is huge. So if Tuesday works best, if everyone guaranteed can work on a Tuesday, do it. I'm getting ready to play through Diablo 4 with some friends of mine, and that was one of the things I orchestrated, was like, I don't want to just do this on the once a month, once every 2 months. We get the idea to try to get to, like, let's put a date and a time, even if it's just an hour every night. For cards, obviously you need about 2-3 hours, but consistency is the key. Be open with your communication. Talk to the group. What is a night that works best for everyone? Does this store work best for everyone? Okay. And then after that, it's up to the individuals. The people have to commit to it. You can show up all you want, but if you can't get people to show up with you, that's unfortunate. And then to make an existing community bigger. That's a good one too. Well, of course you can post about it on all the social medias, Discord, Facebook, try to garner interest. Hey, who in this area would like to play this? Tutorials help. Just if they like the games, that's a huge start. If they like the actual Final Fantasy games, hey, what would you think of this card game? Try to get them to play. And just, for me, the biggest thing is just always be honest. Listen to them. If they're genuinely not enjoying it, okay, well, what about it don't you like? Hey, I don't like the characters, or I don't like the mana system, or, I don't like EX bursts, or something I would say. But, okay, listen, and if it's something you can change, if it's mechanics of the game, you can't really do anything about that, right? But what if it is? What if it's something with the store? This store is too crowded. We had a store we played at way long ago that I always thought was too hot and too small. And so I didn't really like going out there, and it was far for me to drive to, too. It's like, well, this store is a lot closer. That's something you can work on, that you can use to improve. Other than that, how to grow, just advertise. Again, advertise whether on the social medias. The way I found out about my locals originally, how I got into the FFTCG, is I was at Fantasy Shop where we played. I was just up there randomly, like, buying something, and they had a flyer out that said, was the nights and dates of all their events. And I noticed Final Fantasy. Of course, that caught my eye. Like, there's a Final Fantasy trading card game? I said the thing. And what night does this play on? And so, and I only knew about it because I happened to see it that way. So that would be my advice. Again, I'm no marketing specialist. I'm no, developmental salesperson. So maybe there's a lot better business analytical advice someone else could give you, but that's what I could think of. So I hope that was helpful, and good luck if you are trying to grow or to just create one brand new. Hope that was helpful in some way or another. That's it for this week. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. As always, feel free to ask as many as you want. You're not limited to once a week. I'll happily answer whatever, so ask whatever you feel like asking, and I appreciate that. Hope everyone is enjoying Opus 19. We're starting spoiler season for Opus 20, so that'll be coming soon. And yeah, until next time, hey, take care.